thank you, Lorna, for inviting me and for organising this really interesting conference. We have 10 minutes, so I'll do my best to get this into 10 minutes. Here we have Richard Sennett saying that craftsmen who become good at making things develop physical skills which apply to social life. And he presents making as a practiced and embodied expertise, describing this phenomenon as a sort of everyday diplomacy, where in the making process itself, as we tussle with the materials and tools, we build resilience and we act out negotiation procedures in a very material way. However, it's easy to take this for granted. The messiness of this process tends to slide into the background once a piece of work is complete and ready to go on display. So I'm interested in this because it forms the crux of my own practice as a maker of textiles, curious about the social dimensions of textile making. And here, one example of a previous piece of work that myself and a group of collaborators initiated in Paris years ago. This took place in the Belleville district of Paris. It was a 2-year-long collective rug making project. And then as a researcher, my interest is methodological. How can studying the physical skills of making textiles enable us to know something about social life? So in this short presentation, I'm going to introduce 3 short examples of participatory and collaborative textile making activities that highlight key social characteristics of physical stitching skills. And of course, the relevance today is that much of the work presented is based in arpiera, stitching practices and other textiles. For the projects that I'm talking about, of course, this is going to be very brief, so I recommend you look the artists and the makers up. I provide links at the end of my talk and find out more about them. And also, just to flag up, these are not examples located in a peace building context. That's not my background. But my aim is to draw attention to the inherent characteristics of textile making processes that may underpin work that takes place in all sorts of different contexts, and that might include peace building. No doubt we can discuss that later. So my first example deals with the design of these projects. This is taken from my doctoral research. One of the main aims of the research was to reveal ways in which the relationship between an individual and a group might be constructed through their crafting skills, through their stitching skills. So I joined a village embroidery group for part of my study, and the group was making new altar frontals to celebrate the 700th anniversary of their local church. And I want to highlight here how the design of the embroidery panels you can see in the center there, and the stitching activities that everybody undertook reflects the types of social interaction afforded by an informal community-based group of volunteers, if you like, a sort of aesthetics of participation. The embroideries are abstract, colourful designs of shard-like shapes of organza applied onto a base cloth using a variety of embroidery stitches, beading and couched threads, such that individual styles of stitching and individual colour choices are easily absorbed into the whole design without causing discord to the intended overall effect. The embroidery work itself occupies the hands in sufficiently detailed and precise tasks to require focused attention for a satisfyingly productive activity, but with short and repeatable bursts of activity and frequent changes of colour that allow for distraction and interruption, like new conversation threads that might arise, cups of tea, of course. These tasks can be adapted to each participant according to their varied amounts of time available. Not everybody can dedicate a whole afternoon, and their varied skills, their varied levels of skills as well, and also the probability of them acquiring new skills and improving as they work. So these are sort of expandable ways of working. So my second example then considers the logistics of collaboration, and collaboration at large scale involving many participants. An obvious advantage of bringing a group of people together to stitch is that large works can be made. Recruiting many hands spreads the load, enabling the creation of a complex or large-scale piece of work that would otherwise be really difficult to do on your own. But these projects present considerable challenges: how to recruit participants, how to instruct and inform them, how to get materials out to them, how to retrieve the work, how to maintain enthusiasm, how to document the work, and not to mention how or where to store the work at this scale once completed. This requires inventive, collaborative, logistical frameworks. And I suggest that the characteristics of the textile making processes themselves indicate how this might be achieved. This piece of work that you can see on the screen here is called Light Hope. It was an installation created for the Trafford Museum in Kolding in Denmark. And the museum wanted to find a way to contribute positively to its community during lockdown in 2020 and help people through the crisis. So Light Hope was a participatory textile work using crochet, and it became a 50-meter long installation in the museum foyer. The museum curator used national and social media to get people involved crocheting light bulbs. And I know Erica is also interested in the power of social media for recruiting stitchers and makers. We'll hear more about that tomorrow, no doubt. Instructions are made available based on using yarn in popular colours that people might have at home, so beige, white and yellow. A toilet roll core, the cardboard core, was the socket and provides the internal structure for the light bulbs. And here, with an ironic reference to the rush on toilet rolls in the early stages of the pandemic. But again, things that are easily available at home. The rules were simple to follow. People were inspired to be as creative as they wanted to be in their choice of stitches and colours. Overall, 987 participants contributed 1,629 different, each one different, crocheted light bulbs. An almost impossible task to do on your own, that's for sure. Volunteer participants set up collection points in communities to avoid people having to mail their contributions in. Social media platforms were used to enhance participants' involvement, but this could also double up as a form of documentation. In this example, then, the logistics of involvement, the design and implementation of the whole endeavour are built around knowledge of the textile making practices. It relies on people's familiarity with stitch crafts, here crochet, therefore requiring little introduction. Participants do not need to have specialist expertise in order to join in, and opportunities to learn can be offered on site, or in this case, online. Materials and tools are readily available. Materials can be easily divided, packaged up, and shared out. Work can be easily broken down into manageable proportions, is easily transportable, meaning it can be flexibly slotted in around other tasks or duties. Restrictions imposed by technique and scale mean that participants have scope for individuality, but a framework for overall uniformity is quite straightforward to contrive if that's desired. So my last example then examines how certain characteristics of making together can support the development of resilience and emotional intelligence. The therapeutic qualities of stitching and crafting are well documented, how the quiet meditative rhythms of stitching can provide a focused activity of manageable proportions in times of insecurity and offer moments of calm and solace in times of distress. But stitching together rather than alone can be for some more than a solace, small acts of care for each other that can help to build resilience and transform lives. So this notion of care or self-care through useful work, I've got commas around that, is often associated to a stereotype of feminine domestic space as a nurturing, warm, and safe space. Of course, that's questionable in certain contexts, and the work I introduce here takes place in a male-only space, which challenges this stereotype and forces us to think more carefully about the potential for care embedded in the qualities of the process itself.
Apologies to interrupt. You've had 10 minutes. If you could round off in the next 30 seconds. Thank you.
Okay, yes, that's just enough time. This is a project by Sarah Green called Mancraft, working with vulnerable men. And to wrap up, she explains, in her own words, the textile crafting provides the participants with opportunities to discover their abilities through purposeful doing, intense concentration in a task, and a tangible reward. The physical engagement with the textile making process subtly facilitates dialogue, which includes storytelling and self-reflection. Being able to positively contribute to other people's lives through little exchanges, building up little bits of dialogue, boosts their own individual sense of ability. And so my conclusion then is that the careful observation of the characteristics of textile making processes can generate interesting insights into ways of being good at social life, to return to Richard Sennett. And references here, if anybody wants to screenshot. And for the Stitching Together network, many examples can be found here and in these special issue journals. So if you'd like to read up more about the examples mentioned, please do. Thank you very much.